Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is Benjamin Graham with your news. In quarantine news, we are still under quarantine. Under the watchful eye of safety leader Joshua Kahn, over half the station is now under quarantine, afflicted with Captain Trips. Our thoughts are with those few survivors battling the wasteland outside. Never forget the... No, I'm fine.
He's sick!
You're listening to Derry Public Radio.
This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And Benjamin Graham.
What's up, Constant Raiders?
And today we are discussing Part 3 of The Stand. We'll be covering chapters 45 through 51, so spoilers for the book ahead. And we have CM leading our discussion. Take it away, CM.
Thanks, Josh. Last episode, our major characters started to come together, many making their way to Mother Abigail, and others making their way to Father Flag.
I don't like that.
No. I prefer Daddy Flag, thank you.
I'll leave right now.
So Daddy Flag. Before we get going on this, I wanted to ask both of you a question. If you were in this book, who would you be making your way to?
Oof.
Who
boy. Okay, I thought about this too. I did think about this, especially in the later chapters that we're going to get to today, because, you want to think that you're a good person.
Sure.
Right? But there is some stuff that Team Abigail, Team Boulder does and says in preparation for the coming conflict that made me go, holy shit, these are the good guys? Also, I really like air conditioning, so
sure,
who knows?
No, yeah, air conditioning really had me too. I think I would want to go with the Mother Abigail team, but at my heart, I'm a coward and would give in to the Dark Man's terrorizing dreams. And it also affects whether I'm alone or with people. Who you're with as you travel also kind of helps define who you're with, where you end up, I guess.
Yeah, and do we have a choice anyway?
True.
Because that's something that kind of comes up over and over again. Are these people choosing one team or another? There are some people that are on the edge that we kind of get the feeling that they could go either, but they don't. And they can't. Is it fate or is it choice? I think it's fate.
CM, where do you end up?
I'm gonna put a pin in that for now.
A pin in the question you asked.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
We're gonna have to relocate the podcast to Vegas, guys. Sorry.
No, I think it's a combination of fate and choice, because characters in some cases are on the verge of making choices, and we're going to talk about this eventually. And just something happens and it interferes with that choice, but it's still their choice. And then, of course, we get other instances similar to what's happening with the wolves and stuff, which we'll also get to, where Flag is clearly exerting some sort of control over people and animals. So I think it depends maybe on how open you are to giving up your choice and just letting something else take over.
That's a good point.
And I feel like I have to say Mother Abigail just to be contrary. Okay, so chapter 45 kicks off with Mother Abigail, who's sitting on her front porch on one of the most beautiful summer days since 1955. And she is expositioning, which isn't a word, but we're going with it.
We better, because it happens a lot in this stretch.
Yeah, this chapter is very long, so we're not going to have time to discuss everything, which is where you listeners can post on our Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, or email us and we can have a mini chat about the things we didn't cover.
Let's talk about how weird it is that she's Republican.
Oh, boy. So there are two things that I think are important to touch on. And the first is her family's history, how she came to be sitting on the front porch of a house that is totally suited to the apocalypse. The second, of course, the arrival of some of our guests. But before we talk about that, I just want you guys to think about one thing you each thought was really cool from this chapter that we can make sure to touch. So who is Mother Abigail?
Mother Abigail is the oldest person in the world. She's 108 years old. She's got the certificate and the birth certificate and the award from the president to prove it.
Well, let's go back even further than that, Josh, because her family has a unique history in this town they live in.
Yes, they were. It's their family was they were the first black family to own property in this entire area. The thing that I found most interesting in her expositing, is that the word? Is her competing she competed in an all-white talent show and like blew the roof off the place. Mm-hmm. And that's like one of the biggest moments in her like growing up.
She talks about it for a very long time.
Very long time.
In this, in her telling her life story, we get the sense of who she is, and she is brave and she is strong. She is very sure of herself. She knows who she is, and she's very comfortable and sure in that. And all of that comes from her love of God. She's a very devout woman, which is the reason I think that everyone has been dreaming of her, because she's a scion. Is that a word? Is that word meant?
Yeah, she's a beacon of goodness. She's the beacon that tears
robot.
through.
She's like a sleeper.
Not a
who's
Cylon.
Going to
a scion, not a Cylon.
Okay.
No, she is God's messenger
right.
on Earth, and it's super weird to me. I forgot how religious this book gets.
It's so easy to forget how religious this book is, because even some of his other books that kind of dive into religion, like The Mist, for example, the character in that is religious is more of, I think, what we typically think of when we think of overly religious people. Mother Abigail, on the other hand, is like, this doesn't bother me at all. I could listen to her talk about her faith and God and all that all day. It would not give me any icky vomit feelings that I usually get.
Well, I think the important difference is Mother Abigail doesn't want this. Like at a certain point, she says like almost every day that she thinks, does it have to be me? Can't I just not be anymore and it can be someone else's problem? I wake up, I'm still here, so it must still be on me.
Yeah, her unwavering faith is so unrelatable to me that it's fascinating. And she is a great character.
And how does her lifelong stubbornness come to pay off for her and our characters?
Well, she doesn't have to worry about indoor plumbing. She refused to get a toilet inside her house, and she's got a hand pump for a well outside, so she still has fresh water.
Yeah, and it goes into showing stubborn is a really good word, because she's like, nah, I'm these are my ways, but it also shows like that's why she was chosen. Like she could survive because she had all of this old-timey experience. Once our first group, Nick's group, shows up with Tom Cullen and Ralph Bretner and all these people, and she's showing them how to do all this stuff that they never would have known. She helps them slaughter a pig so they can eat.
That was boss.
And it's awesome because she's this 108-year-old woman, and she's like, nah, get out of the way. And I'm going to cut this pig open.
She is self-sufficient. And instead of like finding that crazy guy who's always talking about, the government and conspiracies, and yep. He's got a basement full of guns and canned food, you have Mother Abigail, who's just self-sufficient.
Yeah. Well, and something
kind and loving.
That's something that's interesting is that we talk about how strong she is, but when that morning she wakes up and she knows she's going to get company. So she's like, well, I have to prepare. So she's like, I'm going to go down to this farm and see if the chickens are still alive, and I'm going to go grab some chickens. Those chickens, that farm is 4 miles away. It takes her literally all day to get there. For her strength of spirit, physically, they make it very apparent how like not imposing this woman is. She is so fragile physically that they need this like army of goodness to surround her.
I love that scene. also because of what happens as she's coming back to Hemmingford home, her house. She is walking with these chickens in a bag, getting ready to take them home and slaughter them so she can make food, when she is beset by hundreds of weasels. And she has this flashback to being a kid and being attacked by a weasel, and she's mortally terrified of them. But in that minute, all she does is she's like, hey, get out of here. These are for my guests. And they scatter. And that is the first, other than the supernatural dreams aspect of the dreams, that's the first vision we get of, there's no questioning it. God's real in this world.
Yeah.
God's real, and she's protecting this woman and the people that'll be joining her.
Yeah.
I thought it was also cool because she has a nightmare that night, and it is, Flag likes to take anything good in your life and flip that and make it a nightmare, because when she's talking about this talent show and the white folks and how they're going to react, and her mom's terrified, her dad's like, nope, we got to do this, and she's an adult woman when this happens, and like you said, Josh, they just get blown away by her talent and skill. She sings and plays guitar. Well, in her dream, you escape that moment thinking, thank God, no stupid bullshit racist crap happened like
right.
it most likely would have then, and still now, unfortunately. We got past it, and then here comes Flag. Nope, we're going to get the flip side of that. And she has this horrible nightmare about people reacting poorly to her and calling her names and tearing her off the stage and tearing her clothes off and raping her and
beating her father to death. And,
yeah.
That is every single thing we see of Flag in this section, which isn't a lot. He is a background character. He's always in the back of people's minds.
That's what makes him terrifying.
He does show up in these like little moments. It's so fucking scary.
Let's spend a couple minutes on her guests arriving, because we have a couple days later, Nick, Ralph, Tom, Olivia, June, Dick, and Gina all come.
Yeah, this is our first pilgrims arriving. The second that Nick and Mother Abigail meet, it's such a cool moment because they already know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I got very confused when all these people pulled up. I was like, wait, when did this happen?
Yeah, I thought I missed a chapter where
I was like, wait a minute.
all met up.
Yeah. But like it's very cool that like once they got wheels, they started gathering more followers, and you get that sense of this community growing, and we get more of that as it goes later. Like other groups of people have like gained all these people, and like everybody has made Nick like the de facto leader, despite the fact that he's a deaf mute. Everyone just in that party looks to Nick. Even like they're having a conversation around the dinner table, and as they're talking about things, they look to him as if for confirmation of everything they're saying. I do love that Mother Abigail had to put her teeth in so that Nick could understand her.
Yeah, because she couldn't read her lips. Not only does like everyone automatically has made Nick the leader, but Abigail even pulls him aside and says, Nick, I've been dreaming of you too. You're the one. You are chosen. God has specifically sent you here for a reason. And Nick's like, nah, man. I get that I've seen you in prophetic dreams, but that's a little much. Which is a recurring theme. Like, no, it's so obviously God. But no one will acknowledge it.
Hearing you talk about that exchange makes me so sad and angry about what happens that we're not even going to get to in this episode.
Oh, God.
Oh, dude. Spoilers.
Oh,
my God.
I know. Just a little
Guys, you freak me out sometimes when you talk like
delicious
this.
foreshadowing for Josh. Anything else that you guys want to note about this chapter before we move on?
Really, two quick things. The one that I loved her response when he's like, he doesn't believe in God, and she says, it doesn't matter whether you believe in him, he believes in you. I thought that was a really cool moment to like lock that
Bumper
that feeling
sticker.
in. Yeah, right. But I also, when Abigail talks that she dreamt about the plague 2 years before it happened, and she referred to her premonitions as the shining lamp of God.
I wrote that down too.
I was like, that's awesome.
Okay, so chapter 46, I'm just going to give the chapters at the start of this in case our listeners want to go to that chapter and dig a little deeper maybe than we might.
You have to with a book this thick.
Yeah, chapter 46 is like 50 pages. Okay, so it's interesting because the first two parts of this book moved. And I wouldn't call that slow, but it was now it's taking its time to give us a lot of great character stuff. And so we're back with Franny and the gang. And they've picked up a few more people along the way, and Franny has started to journal to her baby. And she's talking about her trip and what the world used to be like, and for some reason just totally trashing Harold. And the journal that she wants her kid to someday read.
Yeah.
We're going to talk at length about the issue of the journal. But for now, the important part of this chapter is that Mark, a party member we haven't met yet, seems to be a remnant of chapter 38. Chapter 38, if you remember, is the one where a bunch of survivors around the country died meaningless deaths, except for the refrigerator mom who totally had that.
Yeah, when this starts up, she's talking about there's been a time skip, right? And she's talking about the group and casually mentions it's Stu, Fran, Harold, Glenn, and then this Mark Braddock and Perry McCarthy who has joined them. And I'm like, oh, new characters. That's really cool. We're going to get to know these. No, not so much. Because almost immediately, this Mark, his appendix explodes. And it's so tense. This Mark and Perry, I think they call her, met and are in love. And it's just them sitting around watching this guy die and arguing about what can we do? Nothing.
No, yeah. Well, and that's what a lot of the infighting becomes is it better to try to save his life and him likely die because there are no doctors. None of us are doctors. And I think at one point they discussed the philosophy of the bullshit they went through and learned in college. Like, none of us learned anything valuable. Like, we all studied this boring shit. Not one of us learned how to grow crops or be a doctor or like anything that's valuable in this new world. And at a certain point, it just pushes Stu to be like, well, it's better than doing nothing. So Stu and Glenn go in to get like medical equipment and textbooks. And they do their best. Like, he goes in there and tries to take his appendix out. He finds his appendix.
Yeah, the part of the chapter where the chapter jumps around back and forth between what's happening in the present with Mark and his appendicitis and Fran's journal since the last time we had been with this group. And when it cuts back to in media res, the surgery is really cool and really tense and really sad.
Yeah. The way that this was written, because we come back and Stu's, I'm being dramatic, but elbow deep in this guy.
That's dramatic, but also like just what's happening.
And Franny's holding the medical book for him, and everybody's just sort of waiting. And in any other book, in any show, in any fantasy or nightmare you have, it'd work. He would be successful. He would do the surgery. He'd stitch him back up. The guy would pull through. And as Stu is trying his very, very best to save his life, Perry's just like, Stu. And he's like, okay, give me this. I need to do this. Stu. And you know why she's saying his name.
Mm-hmm. And he's trying so hard and he's so determined. It's part of what makes Stu Redmond such a cool character is he just wants to try to do the best he can. And eventually Perry's like, Stu, he died 2 minutes ago. And literally probably before we came back to this scene. He was already dead.
Yeah.
Really shows the futility of the whole situation they're in.
But it does another important thing, and it drives Fran to comfort Stu. So she hugs him, and then Harold kicks rocks and pouts for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Oh, also, we should mention they've been having such awful nightmares that they're all taking sleeping pills.
Which I
Sleeping
believe
pills?
was Harold's
Veronal.
idea.
Yeah,
Yes.
except
Was-
for Franny. She's palming him because she's
Yeah.
pregnant, of course.
Yeah. Which leads to, after Mark dies, the very same night, I think, Perry is found OD'd on these sleeping pills.
Yeah.
So much for those two characters. Let's move
Yeah.
on.
So of all the horror that's happened so far, this next chapter, chapter 47, was the first chapter in this book to truly horrify me. And it starts with the sentence, "When it happened fast." Guys, what happened fast?
My first note was, the book briefly remembers its genre. Up to this point,
Perfect.
everyone's just been traveling across the country. Everyone's got guns, but there's been no problems other than the appendicitis and the finding food and stuff. But there's been nothing that you would expect from a post-apocalyptic genre book.
Right. So this threw me because of that shift. I had to go back and read this again to be like, wait, what just happened? With no context, what happened in my brain was they came across a wreck. There's 4 men, 8 women, and the guys are telling them to dismount because they're on their motorcycles or their motor scooters. And Harold reaches for his pistol and Stu says, "Don't," but then proceeds to slide his rifle down, and then people start shooting each other. And I was like, wait, and I had to go back and start from the beginning and wait, what's happening?
Yeah, that's the same confusion that you feel because it's all being told from Fran's perspective. And it unfolds in that dream-like, you kind of know what's going on. You just primally, you're like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
And she even says, she's like, there were 4 men with guns and 8 women. And then in parentheses, she's like, oh my God, there's 4 guys and 8 women. Just primally like, that doesn't add up.
It's a rape gang.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's bad. But I did laugh once pretty hard because they start firing at each other. And one of these 4 slavers, basically, pulls like a bead on Harold and says, "I'm going to kill you." And Harold's response is to drop his gun and yell, "Don't do that," which is, once again, exactly what I would do in the same situation.
This is also just after Harold fired his first shot, missed, and then is like, whoop.
Yeah.
Ben, you're going to have to stop making comparisons.
No,
some
we
point.
will get there because
Yeah.
no.
Deviates. So there is an epic gunfight, and they're all terrible fighters, except Stu, who is the least terrible fighter. Stu, our gunslinger, you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Arguably, I think the best fighter is the girl who bludgeons the guy to death with a shotgun.
No,
That is
Yeah.
pretty badass. Like, she pulls the trigger and finds there's nothing in it, and she just flips it around. Let's do this.
this fight that's why it's so upsetting, is I feel like it's so realistic. Because none of these people, except for arguably the 4 guys with guns who are dressed in army fatigues, some of them, our heroes aren't trained firefighters.
Yeah.
They are not trained with guns. Of course, they're going to miss most of their shots. And it just makes it more tense.
Yeah.
So Dana and Susan join the party, and this is when we figure out why, when our group met this rape gang, the women just lost their shit. So they had been kidnapped, drugged, raped, just horribly mistreated. And this gang had been following our gang, and they wanted Franny. And so the women saw this confrontation as an opportunity for them to get the upper hand on their kidnappers. They were being, I think I mentioned they were being drugged. So before this happened, they had started palming their drugs so that they could be more clear. And then as soon as they saw that opportunity, they took it. And 2 of the women survive and join our gang.
5, actually.
5.
There are 5 survivors.
So 5 of the women survive and join our gang.
Most of them are catatonic, though.
Right.
The way they describe some of the things that these women have
That's
been
why
through
I didn't remember the other 3.
horrific.
Some of it is so awful.
So Dana gives Franny a wake-up call because Franny thinks that she's into Stu, which ultimately causes her to go to Stu.
I would like to take a second to discuss Franny's character for a second.
Go ahead.
I've liked Fran so far, but she's a kid. Like, how old is Franny? Do we know?
19.
19 or 18?
Yeah.
Yeah, she shows it in this section. In the previous chapter, as Mark is laying, dying, cradled in the arms of this Parian that's in love with him, there's a moment where she's looking at them, and she says, Franny always thought she saw the best in people. But the way she then describes Parian is as, quote, looking like a horse, and describing her hair as almost gorgeous. What a asshole.
Having like
she
flashbacks
is.
to the long walk.
I was like,
Yeah.
she has horse hair.
Yeah, that's such a dick move. And now they've just rescued these 5 women from mortal peril and literally the worst thing that has ever happened in their lives. They are all shell-shocked. And as soon as they sit down to talk, Dana says one fucking sentence to Stu, and she's like, hey, it's a Harold move. They are not
yes.
together.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
she's instantly like, that's my guy.
Remember when we first met
Really?
Franny and I said when I read this book as a teenager, I hated her?
I kind of get that now.
Yeah. Oh, Harold put the moves on Franny officially, finally, I guess.
He went in, he made the smooch, and it was gross.
It went about as well as we expected it to go. Yeah, Franny goes to Stu. They're a thing now. It's very sweet, and they make love in the woods. And instead of like getting that scene
So
where
romantic.
the camera pans out and we see the curtain blowing gently in the breeze of the open window, we pan out and we see Harold watching them do it.
Standing behind some bushes.
Fuck. And this is just after they like have sex in the woods because they're romantic. And they're like laying there, and Fran says something about being worried about Harold. And Stu sticks up for the guy. He's like, oh, Harold, he's a kid, but he's a good kid. He has goodness in him. And I wrote, God damn, I like Stu. And then immediately, like, Harold is standing in the bushes, and I'm like, fuck, I hate Harold. God damn it. I would like to put it out there. After this section, Harold is not my Annie.
Okay.
Not at all. I have no empathy for this fucking kid. He sucks.
Yeah, this is a major turning point for Harold's character, although he does come upon those crossroads as we continue.
Unfortunate phrasing.
So what happens next is that Harold sneaks into Franny's tent in the dead of the night. He takes her journal. And Ben, you wanted to talk about what is in her journal. He reads it. Let's talk about that.
He reads through her journal, and Franny, being kind of an asshole, has not been kind. Not the meanest. It's never been malicious.
But it's so almost thoughtless that kind of makes it meaner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Later on, she even says, she goes back through her journal and says, for what purpose? Mm-hmm. Why did I bother writing so much about what an asshole Harold is? Granted, he is. But, like, he reads all of this, and it breaks him.
I want to know what you guys think about that, because after he reads it and he's putting it back, he thinks to himself, if she wakes up, I'll kill her and I'll run.
That was
and
fucked up.
That's I know that he saw them make love and he's supposed to be in love with her, and that must be terrible and dramatic. And then he finds out what she really thinks of him in a way that she would never tell him. Like, it's a very sort of open and vulnerable moment. But wow, he just goes right for, I will kill her.
The contrast here, like, I don't know if this struck anyone else as very jarring, but directly following, if she'd woken up, I would have killed her. It says he went back to his sleeping bag and masturbates bitterly, is the phrasing. And I'm like, what is happening in your brain that these are the connections you're making now?
Well, it breaks his brain. I do believe this is the point where there's this point where he says, quote, he could have stopped. Oh, wait, no, that's not a real quote. That's my own quote. He has this half a second of sanity. Like, as he's reading this, he's taking it in and feeling this, basically the real center of Harold's character, self-loathing. It's all of this hate and anger. It's all just misdirected self-loathing. But he's feeling this, but he has this half second of sanity where he says, I could put this back and let it all go. I could create a new life. I could move on. I could be this useful member of society. But then that would be throwing away everything he sees as himself. And the quote that is not real, but I wrote down, quote, he could have stopped, but he was too much of a gross pervert.
I feel like we get in later chapters a better sense of why he was unwilling to let this go, because it's sort of these things about him that he needs to change and that are ultimately going to destroy him make up his self-identity. So Harold starts his own journal, the Ledger, which we're going to get more of.
After dreaming of the Dark Man and a red eye in the west as he dies on a steep hill covered in rocks.
Okay, just a note about the chapter we just covered and the one we're about to go into. These two chapters were originally cut from the early editions.
Really?
I knew that about the next chapter. I didn't know that about this one.
Interesting.
And these are like really hard chapters.
They are honestly content warning for the past 10 minutes of the and the next 10 minutes.
You guys, last episode I didn't like Trashcan Man. I came down on him pretty hard. He has my complete sympathy.
Okay, Harold Lauder is not my Annie Wilkes. Fucking Trashcan Man is. Trashcan Man is the goddamn hero of this book.
Oh my god.
Josh,
all right.
Can you just like flip-flop like that? Once you have internalized a character that way, the way you and I have done, can you just go back on it and switch it up?
It's different. I understand Harold. As much as I don't want to, I get his damage. Like, I understand it, but I don't fucking empathize. I empathize. I don't sympathize with him.
You're not rooting for him.
Yeah. You can understand someone's behavior without condoning it.
Exactly.
Yep. No, I'm just giving you a hard time, Ben.
Fucking rules. And everything that he does and is not his fault.
Oh, all right.
It is society and fucking God that has failed him.
I'm inclined to agree with everything you just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this chapter starts with Trashcan Man coming through the mountains. He has traveled across. We last saw him in Indiana, and he is coming out of the mountains and sees Vegas in the distance. And he has lost his entire goddamn mind.
And he's like burnt up and in pain and
burnt, torn. His body is literally rotting. Like, he says that the smell from his arm isn't as bad as it used to be.
He's a glass half full kind of guy, and that's what I appreciate about Trashcan Man.
Yeah, but he sees, I wish I would have looked up how to pronounce
Cibola, the promised land in the distance.
And we jump back and forth between his journey to Vegas and his adventure with the kid.
Yeah, he meets Elvis Presley. I I hate this guy.
He looked like baby Elvis.
Oh my God.
Was the description.
Yeah. He is described. Okay, so backtrack. As he was traveling across the country, where we should start with him walking through our hometown.
Yeah.
Yes, that was so cool.
It's literally one line, but every single time I read this book, I take a picture of it and like send it to people. I'm like, they mention the Quad Cities. That's rad. But he travels and he goes through Nebraska. This is the first part I want to talk about.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Because he's been having dreams of the Dark Man. And he's already saying, my life for you. You are... He's pledging himself to the Dark Man. But as soon as he gets to Nebraska, those dreams fade. And he starts having another dream.
He starts having nightmares. This is the first time he's experiencing nightmares. Nightmares of this old woman that he feels is somehow going to stop him if he doesn't make it through before she gets him.
And is it this chapter where she's dreaming of him and he's like hiding in the corn and she feels pity for a moment? Yes.
Except bullshit. Okay, this is what I want to talk about Trashcan Man could have been saved, but God fucking rejects him. He walks through Nebraska, which is hallowed land. When you enter Nebraska, you stop dreaming of the Dark Man. And he dreams of Mother Abigail, this warm, inviting person, the symbol of God on earth. And when Mother Abigail, who is also dreaming of him because it's a two-way connection, she feels him in the corn. And instead of saying, you poor man, you mentally disturbed person who has been tormented and lived such a painful life, please come to me. I will give you rest. I will help you. She goes, weasels in the corn! And flips out.
Question for you, though. I alluded to earlier that Flag can be inside of our heads, and he can kind of control us and make us follow him. Does she think there are weasels in the corn because of that touch that he's placed on him?
That's very possible. Because this happens one other time later on with a different character, where Mother Abigail sees something in them and doesn't invite them in.
Gets distracted by something, yeah.
Sure, if Flag's like fucking with it, what the hell, God? Like,
this is an Old Testament God, man.
Yeah, it's mad fucked up. Put that on the back of the book.
Mad fucked up, Benjamin Graham. I don't want to like really go into this in detail because it's horrible, but Elvis Presley rapes Trashcan Man.
Yeah.
And I had to stop. I put the book down.
God, it's so dark.
And in our chat, I was like, this chapter is horrible.
Yes.
This is hard.
The kid, he's this tiny little guy with a baby face that looks like a little Elvis and is described like a bad guy in a Coen Brothers movie.
Yep.
And drives a hot rod and gets drunk, and the less we talk about him, the better. And I knew this was a cut from the original book.
It's so interesting because this chapter is what made me feel for him, the Trashcan Man, and made me like realize, man, he's a guy with problems, and if somebody would help him, things would be different.
The important thing that the kid brings to the table in this situation is that him and the Trashcan Man, he's like, oh, I'm going to meet Flag too. I'm going to join the Dark Man's army. But when I get there, I'm going to take it over. I'm going to see what his whole operation is, and then I'm going to be the boss. And that's the first time that the Trashcan Man's faith is essentially tested. And after that terrible night they spend together, he gets a vision of Flag saying that just wait and see.
Wait and see.
It's sad because Flag doesn't do what he does to Elvis because of what he did to Trashcan. He's not protecting his Flag.
Sure, no.
He does it because he's being arrogant and thinks that he can take over.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gets eaten by wolves. Not brutal enough.
No, I thought
we never actually see him be eaten by wolves.
Yeah, he gets chased into a car by dozens and dozens of
So he
wolves.
either gets eaten to death by wolves or he starves to death.
But that's
in
my
a car.
favorite thing. Like, so they're standing there, and the kid rushes in because all these wolves are coming down, and he locks himself in the car, and they're not harming Trashcan Man. And one of them like bites his hand a little and leads the Trashcan Man away. And he has the thought that he has is, I wonder how long those wolves will stay there. Well, I guess as long as it takes. And that then just leaves him to the night.
Yeah. Before we move on, I do want to say you said the most important thing that the kid brings is this flag showing his power to the Trashcan Man. I would argue the most important thing he brings is two of the worst catchphrases I have ever heard in my goddamn
so
life.
annoying.
Do you believe that, happy crappy? Fuck you. Get out of my book.
Ben, it took me like a week to get that phrase out of my head, and you just put it back.
So annoying.
I don't even remember what the other one is. I have forcibly removed it from my
it was don't tell me, I'll tell you.
Don't tell me, I'll tell you. You fucking
Josh,
asshole.
you're listening to it, right?
Yes.
Josh and I are both listening to it.
I'm listening
that
and
adds
reading.
a level of
Ugh.
difficulty.
I literally stopped the audiobook and read the rest of this chapter.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it again.
I couldn't do it.
Oh, all right.
We should mention that this chapter ends with Trashcan Man reaching Vegas, meeting Lloyd,
God, yeah.
and being accepted. And this is another thing, that the reason Trashcan is so loyal is when he gets there, he's brought in with open
You
arms.
guys, this is so messed up because in this moment, I was so happy for him because it's the first time he's been treated well
That's
by
what I'm
anyone.
saying.
Happy.
And
Even when he does have to participate in a
which
crucifixion.
he just gets right up there and goes for it, man.
Yeah,
But his-
denying the guy 3 times because Stephen King is not subtle.
his meeting with Lloyd, though, was weird because Lloyd seems like a completely different person than who we've met before.
Yes,
For sure.
He's competent and
he seems like he has a head on his shoulders.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
We're messed up.
I knew that I was gonna like the new Lloyd as soon as he referred to himself as the Dark Man's mascot. And I was like, yeah, this is great.
All right, so chapter 49, this is a short one. We just catch back up with Larry and his party. Larry's got a lady, Lucy. She and the judge, another cool dude that we're going to get more of, fortunately.
The judge who I at first wrote is indistinguishable from Glenn Bateman.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's just a cool old
He's
dude.
Larry's Glenn.
Yeah.
So they have a heart-to-heart talk about what kind of man Larry is. A one who is struggling to be good.
It's still a fucking asshole. This whole scene, him and Lucy, who he is with, have a talk about
How he loves Nadine.
He's in love with Nadine. And he says to her, Lucy, I love you as much as I can.
Oh, God, that's brutal.
What a dick.
So brutal.
In her defense, he's sort of the last man on earth.
Well, and it's also, I mean, like, yes, Larry is being a taker in this situation, but she acknowledges her part in that she is allowing this, of like, she is still with him because she needs something from him too.
And we also get some of Nadine's backstory and some understanding of her connection to the Dark Man.
Okay, so the note that I made, that Lucy talks about, Nadine denies having any dreams. She refuses to, she says she's not having any of these. They're all full of shit. In her dreams, she's talking out loud, and she keeps saying, so cold, in her dreams. The note I made, is she dreaming of Flag having sex with her?
It's his dick. His dick is cold.
His dick is cold. He's got that ice wang. And because I remember that from the first chapter about him having sex with people and they just felt an unshakable coldness. Mm-hmm. And almost immediately after is when she says that she's saving herself for Flag.
Mm-hmm. She's a virgin. She doesn't know. She just thinks, yeah, give me that cold dick.
Cool.
They're cold, right?
Nadine's story is really fascinating, I think, because in this chapter we get a feeling that it's going to be like this battle within her for her soul? Will she go because she's attracted to Larry? She almost let Larry. She always was with Larry, and that would have broken whatever hold Flag has or whatever. It's interesting to be like, oh, will she be good? Will she be bad? It sucks that boils down to who will Nadine fuck.
Oh, when you say it like that.
Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah.
Well, she is a woman in the apocalypse, so as Franny has stated
we skipped over that.
What else is she good for, guys? Women, their only power is to pop out babies now in this new world.
Women are slaves to their bodies, is what
Franny has a bit where she just goes on this tirade saying, "Thank you, men, for taking care of us."
Okay, you know what? I have to go back to my original statement. I don't like Franny. Okay, let's talk about what happens with Nadine, her backstory a little bit, and then we'll move on.
The important thing, I think, the coolest thing about Nadine's backstory is that every time she has some sort of sexual urge, she wakes up the next morning with not gray but more white hair. Every one of those instances, like that, she's slowly like,
yeah, because Shang Tsung sucked out part of her soul, giving her Sindel hair. Yeah,
I thought that was super cool.
Well, sex is evil for her.
I guess, so, yeah.
There's got to be some sort of punishment. I didn't make the rules. Stephen King made the rules. Don't look at me that way. Okay, chapter 50.
We are finally in, drumroll please, the Boulder Free Zone. Fuck, yes, zone. I love zones,
Ben
you
loves
guys.
zones.
Yeah.
I fucking love them.
We may have failed to mention that Mother Abigail was told by God that they need to go to Boulder, Colorado, even though she doesn't want to leave her sweet home that has the best setup. So they are building a new life in Boulder. And Larry and gang arrive in this chapter, and Joe and Nadine have interesting and completely opposite reactions to Mother Abigail. Let's start with Joe.
All right, so Larry's group is meeting Mother Abigail, and Joe's reaction is amazing. Joe immediately loves Mother Abigail. Like, he jumps into her arms, and they're like worried he's gonna like break her with like, as aggressively as he's diving in. And Joe says his name. Joe's name is Leo.
Close enough.
Which will proceed to confuse me for the rest of the chapter.
And everyone else, it seems, because everyone else very realistically is like, Joe, it's Leo. Oh yeah, right.
Right. The amazing thing here is, so like now, like, we have Nadine, who is, you know, made for the Dark Man, and we have Mother Abigail. They're so close together, and Joe is in between them, and he is saying his name to Mother Abigail, and Nadine keeps calling him Joe and keeps calling him back, and so like it's like a mini battle for his soul right there in the meet and greet.
I would argue it's a mini battle not for Leo's soul, but for Nadine's.
Yeah, this is the second instance of God just fucking it up real bad. Because, when Abigail walks up to, or when Nadine walks up to Mother Abigail, Abigail immediately, she sees her face and thinks that it's the Dark Man. She thinks she sees Randall Flagg in her. She knows something. There's something evil about this woman. But then she doesn't trust that feeling. She's like, no, she's surely just a woman, isn't she? Throughout these next two chapters, people keep having
instincts they ignore.
That they completely ignore. They sense something evil in their midst. And they're just like, no.
Stuff like that doesn't happen. I mean, we all follow this lady here because of a dream.
Yeah, exactly.
But my instincts can't be right now.
Yeah. So there's this second where instantly they're like opposed. And Nadine, you think that there's going to be this battle for her soul, but she sees Mother Abigail and immediately is like, nah.
Mm-hmm.
And just walks away. But see, and that's the thing is that it's like, as Nadine gets further away from her, Mother Abigail loses the clarity that she had when she was right in front of her. It's like something was trying to stop her from locking into that thought. And as soon as Nadine is out of eyesight, it's all gone. And she knows something was there, but what was it?
And she feels pressured to stay because she is like the greeter, the welcomer. Everybody's there to see her. Mm-hmm. And that is going to come back to bite her eventually, which we're not going to get to in this episode. But just keep that in mind. She pays the price for this moment. So later that night, Larry visits Franny and tells her a love story.
Yeah. I wrote down Fran and meets Larry. It's very natural and not stilted at all.
This is so awkward because he's brought this bottle of wine. It's aged, and he has like a million payday candy bars because he's been following Harold's empty wrappers and his signs. And he's telling Franny this epic journey that he had, and Harold was his guide, his light at the end of the tunnel, and he can't wait to meet him. And she's just sitting there like, our Harold?
It weirds her the fuck out.
And she doesn't, I think this is kind of cruel. She does not prepare him for what he's about to get into when he does meet Harold. Well, and she should have, though.
But she doesn't. This is another instance of feeling something wrong and ignoring it because she doesn't really know that there's, or won't acknowledge that there's something wrong about Harold. He's completely changed. He smiles all the time and is friendly, and they describe him as like a politician, that he's always very glib, but there's classic King, the smile never reaches his eyes.
Right.
But everyone's just like, no, that's Harold.
They can chalk a lot of stuff up to what they've all been through. They've all been through the end of the world. Some people are just handling it better than others, and maybe they are allowing him that like weirdness because of that.
But we quickly learn that they should not be ignoring Harold.
No, because Harold is at home writing what he professes to be the most eloquent, profound words man has ever written.
Yes, the writing in this, not Harold's writing. Harold's writing is
pretentious and immature and crazy.
It's the writings of a madman, because he has this ledger that he says there's no paragraph breaks, there's no sentences. It is margin to margin scrawling, and that's insanity. But the
that's how
writing,
I write my journals.
the writing in this section though is really good. King's writing. That he's on his lawn with his ledger in his lap and looking up at the stars and saying they aren't lovers' stars. They're too harsh and too hard. That he says he's sitting under the haters' stars and so he makes a wish on them. And I just, as much as I hate Harold, he's still a really good villain.
He's
a great villain.
He is fun to read.
And his goddamn arrogance in this manifesto full of hate, where he says he's going to, he knows he's going to be in the inner circle of everything that happens inside this place. And after a couple months, he's going to take all this information. He's going to walk to Flag's camp and be welcomed with open arms. He legitimately thinks he is going to be made like Prince of the Dark Army because of the value he provided.
Yeah.
And the chapter ends with one of the best visuals in the book so far of him walking into his house and going into his bathroom and practicing smiling in the dark. Good. And I wrote down, that's good villain shit.
Oh, yeah. Are you sure he's not your Annie?
No, because he's a real piece of shit.
So is Annie. All right. Chapter 51, July 4th, 2019. All staff of Derry Public Radio were present. C.M. Alexander led the discussion.
Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah. There's these
You get it? You get it, right?
Yeah, I got
These last two chapters, I love this book. But the political bullshit
I want to leave
me crazy.
These two chapters while they talk about all that crap and go see what Flag's doing, because it has to be more exciting.
Yes. There is so much discussion of politics, and I snore. Okay. I don't care.
We've talked about Stephen King moments, and typically they're these like profoundly terrifying moments over just this tiny little detail that he has a way of describing to you that is terrifying. There are also Stephen King moments where we get like page after page about the most mundane details.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I love them both. They are part of what makes reading a Stephen King book.
Very
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of these two chapters, there's a lot of discussion on what comes next. How do we become a society again? And some of the ways that they go about it, once again, make me go, we're rooting for these guys? These are the good guys? Really?
They make a point to say just because these are the good guys does not mean they're immune from doing bad things.
True.
They are not pure goodness. They are flawed, but at their core good.
I fucking guess.
Well, and it shows you the difference between how a society forms itself around a radical leader who has given everyone sort of emotional goal, this emotional radical goal, and another leader who is sort of stepped back a little more, and the people themselves have to form a group of people to rally around.
And they go about it the shittiest way possible.
Yeah, they're trying to reform a society.
Maybe it's just my own political leanings that I have a problem with this. In the last chapter, there was this long segment of Stu and Glenn in the mountains drinking wine and bullshitting, basically, and coming up with the plan to go forward. Stu asking Glenn, what do? We need a step-by-step guide to get shit going. And his first two ideas are, one, ratify the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all that. Essentially be like, no, it's still America.
Yeah, reboot the government 2.0.
That is a fine idea in theory, but you can do better, man. You are starting from scratch. How about, okay, we're going to ratify the Bill of Rights, but also let's not do all the corruption and white supremacy bullshit. Let's get that out of there.
Keep in mind, you're talking about a drunk sociologist.
Okay, fine. But literally the second step is we're going to have a perfect democracy that we immediately undermine because we're going to set up our board of directors, 7 people on this committee that we pick and choose and no one gets a say in.
Right.
It's just all such well, you're doing it. You're making America again, better or worse.
Do you guys want to keep talking about politics?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
Let's
talk about Larry meeting Harold.
Yes.
So I thought his approach up to Harold and what happens was pretty cool and disturbing.
Larry and Leo go to finally track down Harold's house. And as they get there, they catch Harold unaware as he's gardening. And when they call out his name, he turns around and for a second, Larry sees the real menace. He sees the real Harold before he can kind of put that mask back on. And Leo senses that and is saying, I don't want to go anywhere near this guy, so I'm going to be out here. You do your thing. And Larry approaches Harold. They hit it off. And all of Harold's rehearsing and practicing is paying off because Larry buys the smile. He buys the attitude, hook, line, and sinker.
And once again, reading about Harold here is a completely different character than when we first met him. He talks different. When he meets Larry outside, he says, oh, come on inside. We ought to have a jaw.
He's trying to be one of the good old boys, like Glenn and Stu.
Not him at all.
No. So my favorite part is after all of this, Larry comes out and he'd wanted Leo to come in with him. And he's like, no, something wrong with that guy. Got to go. Well, he didn't say that at that point, but he refused. And so Larry's like, okay, walk back to our place. You know how to get there, right? Awesome. He comes out a few blocks later. Leo was just waiting for him the whole time. And so they start to have a conversation about Harold. Because Larry, he does buy it all, but there's still that instinct in him. And something was off about that meeting. And Leo says, he is spot on with this. He's not like us. He smiles a lot, but I think there might be worms inside him making him smile. Big white worms eating up his brain like maggots.
Leo is, I love Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And his relationship with Larry, that's the biggest redeeming quality for Larry so far, is that he's walking down the street, he's doing stuff, and Leo's copying him behind.
Yeah.
I think Leo has saved Larry. And,
Absolutely.
And Leo has an interesting relationship with Lucy and Nadine, too. So he calls Nadine mom and Lucy mom. So he's sort of living between these two families.
Mm-hmm. I almost called him Joe. Leo is such a great character, and you have the sense that he sees through people. He has this intuition. He even says, Larry asks him, why do you think his blinds were drawn? Everyone else, all the houses they've moved into, all the blinds are open, but not Harold's. And Leo says, maybe he's praying to the dark man.
Because all of the closed blinds houses are houses where there are dead people.
Mm-hmm. And Larry's
and Harold's
like,
dead inside.
Yeah. And yeah, he says that, and Larry like kind of jumps, and then he's just like, huh, wonder what that means. And then completely ignores it.
So the next part we get, Franny finally listens to her instincts, and she finds Harold's calling card on her diary that tells her that he has read it. And that's when she is looking through this going, why was I giving him, like, why did I have to write about him that way? That was pretty cruel. And she finds a chocolate thumbprint smudge on her journal. And since she doesn't eat paydays and Harold does, she realizes what happened. And then just completely ignores that for quite a while.
Pretty much, yeah.
Fun fact, I don't think there was ever such thing as chocolate paydays. Nope, never mind, there were.
Wait, what?
Continuing
I literally
on.
saw a payday today at the store.
But anyway, I thought it was just because there's a callback, I think, in one of the Dark Tower books where they find they enter into the world of the stand, and I think one of them finds a chocolate payday, and they're like, "What the hell is this?
That's amazing.
There's never a chocolate payday."
Anyway. So we're in the universe of the stand if you just found a chocolate payday.
Oh shit!
I don't like that.
So all of this happens, and it brings us as after Franny finds the chocolate thumbprint. It's the night of the first meeting of the Free Zone Ad Hoc Committee.
Zone.
They're preparing for the first big town-wide meeting in which they are going to subvert democracy and elect their cabal. And they have this meeting, and they ratify a bunch of unimportant shit, and it is boring as hell until they get to Nick's absolutely insane idea. Spies.
That I immediately wrote that Nick suggests sending infiltrators to gain intel. ... Oh, that's not going to work.
And I remember this. This is one of those things that, like, the back half of this book, for whatever reason, is not nearly as clear in my memory as the rest of it. But I remembered this part, and I remembered who they send. And it still blows my goddamn mind. What did you guys think?
Well, the first two were whatever. They, I believe, Larry suggests the judge.
Mm-hmm.
Sue
because
suggests,
he's old, and if he dies, who cares?
So what?
Because Larry's a real nice guy now.
Sue suggests Dana, and they do that. And then Nick suggests Tom Cullens.
That hurt.
Fuck. This is the point where I wrote, Jesus Christ, this chapter really turned me against the Free Zone. Like,
oh my God.
This is the most fucking cruel thing they could possibly do. Nick's reasoning is, well, Tom Cullen, he's slow, but that'll be a bonus because we can really train him to go do this thing that he doesn't fully understand and can't fully comprehend.
He can be hypnotized.
He can be hypnotized, and if they torture him, he won't give it up. Bad, heartless idea.
Well, and here's what's even worse about it. They do the vote. All of the men vote yes. The women vote no. Once it's official, the women are like,
yeah,
all right,
might as well.
Guess.
Yeah, it is such...
I don't even know why women are on this committee. Are they having babies?
Yeah, it is. It sucks for just a whole lot of reasons. Yeah, my last note is, Fran and Sue vote yes anyway. Fuck these people.
Well, that's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us on our next episode, Part 4, where we'll be covering chapters 52 through 61. For Benjamin Graham and CM Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, every dog has its day.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. We hope you enjoyed The Stand Part 3. Another bit of trivia for you, courtesy of the illustrated Stephen King trivia book. In honor of the miniseries, since we'll be watching that soon, what part did King play in The Stand? Randall Flagg, Teddy Wisak, Bill Hapscomb, or the Monster Shouter? Tell us on our social media. You can find us at Derry Public Radio. That's Derry Public at Twitter, of course. The first person to post the correct answer gets an amazing prize. Update on the prize: there is no prize, but you will get the admiration, respect, and undying love of all those around you when you wow them with your Google search abilities. As always, check out our website, constantreaders.org. Read some cool short stories and poetry, and we take submissions, so submit something to us. And don't forget to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Derry Public Radio. Huge thank you to all of our current subscribers. You guys and gals continue to amaze us. If you're not into subscribing, you can make a one-time donation to our PayPal at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. And if you're not into giving us any money, which is totally cool, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us on iTunes so that they don't think we're dead and bury us where we'll never be found again. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.